Welcome to Numbers Don't Lie, Marketing Insights for Accountants. I'm Brad Pinzur.
And I'm Janel Sykora. Welcome back. It's been a minute since we've done this, but we are so excited today because we have a very special guest and we cannot wait to pick his brain. And we're not picking his brain about being a golf model, but we are going to pick his brain about accounting. So I'd like to welcome Craig Hausz. Craig is a CPA, and along with his wife, Michelle, they own CMH Advisors and CMH Wealth Management in Dallas, Texas. So Craig, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Thank you. Welcome. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we have a lot to get to, but I want to kind of start with a little bit about your backstory. So I want to rewind because I see that you started back in 2014. Is that right?
Correct. We started our firm in 2014.
Okay. So what did your firm look like back then when you started? And what was like that turning point where you're like, oh my gosh, we've got to grow. We got to figure this thing out.
Yeah. I'll back up to 2013. So right before this, Michelle and I are both CPAs. I was working for a large wealth management firm here in Dallas. And between the two of us, we looked at each other kind of over Christmas time and went, at some point, we both are pretty good at this. We should start up our own firm. And, after she laughed at me for, several minutes and thought I was joking, it really kind of kicked in that, maybe this really is a good thing to do. And she at the time had a few clients on her own that she was handling as an outsourced CFO. And I'm at this wealth management firm. And we kind of looked around and said, instead of starting up a wealth management firm, why don't we start up a CPA firm? We can do advisory work, financial planning, CFO, like advisory services, and accounting and tax, and really be that full service firm for these clients that we were dealing with who wanted really a one-stop shop, a virtual family office that they could go to and get all of the advice, tax planning, filings, everything out of the way. And, some of them use the term one throat to choke, right? Like we are their advisor. And so, over a few months, we looked at how are we going to do this? What's this going to look like? And came to the conclusion that, we could start up with some immediate cash flow from, I had one big client, and then she had, one really big client with about 70 partnerships in it. And between the two of those, we could get started. And early on, somebody said, hey, have you looked at, acquiring a practice? There's tons of CPAs that retire all the time. They're always selling their book of business. And so we looked at it and we actually found two retiring CPAs with about 150,000 to 200,000 each that they were selling and looking to retire. So we, approached them through a broker, and over, by kind of middle of June, we started, really getting serious with it, got some financing from a bank through an SBA loan, and closed end of August of 2014. So we had our two main clients and then all of these new clients that were coming on.
Whoa.
And we started in literally what was a file room, maybe not bigger than my office, which is 15 by 15. We had tons of boxes along the wall. I think there were like close to 40 of these bankers boxes of just client files and documents. And we rented this room from another wealth management firm who had, 6 or 8 people in a break room and a conference room. So it was great. And that was literally how it started. For the first 6 to 8 months, it was just the two of us sitting in this file room, cranking out tax returns, doing monthly accounting, talking to them about planning. And
fun on Excel.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's really funny. I mean, we've been married now 24 years. So at the time we were married, it was our 14th year of marriage. Things were kind of moving along pretty well. We had 2 young daughters who I think at the time were 10 and 7. And, so we had these young kids. They would come in on the weekends and help scan and sort documents and just help us with various tasks around the office, which of course, then from a CPA perspective, hey, we got some tax deductions, right, for our kids. But yeah, it was really just the two of us really, I don't know if you use the term bootstrapping or how you want to do it, but I mean, we cleaned toilets, we threw out the garbage, take out the garbage, cleaned everything up. We did it. It was if it had to be done, it was done by the two of us.
So that's funny. So you guys chose to build this business right at the time your kids were probably getting crazy busy with activities, because my girls were about the same age back then. And I remember their dad started a business and we were doing the exact same thing. And it was so funny because my oldest, she was 10 at the time, and she was obsessed with the shredder. And all she wanted to do was shred stuff. But that got a little out of control because you'd see her picking up piles of things. You're like, no, 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 not that, not that. So I know how helpful they can be when you have a business at that age.
Oh, yeah. And this was pre-TikTok, but our 10-year-old was really creative, and she somehow created these mini videos of like papers going through the scanner and then papers going through the shredder. Obviously no client data was on them, but she created this whole video of like my Saturday in the office and then put music to it, which, now you looking back, it was like, well, kids do that all the time with TikTok, but she was doing it with, I don't even know the program, but it was some program she found, a digital Michelle found, it was exactly, and the irony, she's going to be a senior in college this year, and she is going to come in during the summer here and help us, with some of this. And one of them was, not necessarily full social media, but as we're getting started with you with some of these tasks and things they're going to be doing, it's like, this is stuff that, she can do in her sleep almost.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
So it's going to be a really good transition for us.
That's exciting. Very cool. Well, okay. So I saw online somewhere that you guys have achieved over 300% growth since 2021. So that is no joke. So was that kind of your vision or your plan all along, or did you just kind of hang on and hope the wheels wouldn't fall off?
I'm a big picture visionary type thinker, and I don't mean the visionary in a regulatory way, but I'm one of those that I'll just sit there and think of all these different things we can do. And then Michelle is sitting there saying, no, 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 no. And then every once in a while, she's like, oh, that's actually not a terrible idea. We should do that. And, so we've we've actually added 4 other firms along the way.
Oh, wow.
As we've grown. Most of them were like 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022. So it's kind of a consistent every 2 years. At the end of 24, we actually added a small wealth management practice from one of the CPAs that we had purchased a few years before. So we've seemed to have, acquired some books of business as we've gone. No, there's not like this massive, like we need to be a $20 million firm, by the year 2030. But I wouldn't mind being a $10 million firm by the year 2030. Mm-hmm. So, there is I think there's a decent ramp up of growth. It just kind of happened that between acquiring a practice and then we added like 6 more people. And once those people came on, we were able to add quite a few clients that we weren't able to service before adding them. We've got a few from the big 4 firms. So we've got, this new, group of younger, between ages of like 28 and 35 that have joined our firm that, as you can see, are younger than me and Michelle, that can be this next generation. And that has really helped us spike the growth.
Oh, yeah.
Years.
And are these businesses all local to you, or were they around the country?
Yeah, no, all the practices we've acquired are Dallas based.
Okay. Because we
looked at one in Colorado. We've looked at one in California, but it's a big step to go to a different state, mm-hmm. Around the country, even though we have clients we file for in 42 different states.
Wow.
So we have some clients that, like corporations, that file in 20, 30 states. So there's, and just them alone. But then we've got clients. We don't have Alaska, but we had Maine, Hawaii, Florida for a while. So we basically had all 4 corners. We had Washington. Yeah. We just didn't have the Alaska.
So let me ask a question, because I've heard companies, other accounting firms, they've acquired other companies and they've made mistakes during that process, and maybe they would have done it differently. It sounds like you've acquired 4 firms successfully. What do you think was about your approach to that allowed you to be successful?
Yeah, I don't know if we would classify them all as successful. We've had many learning opportunities along the way. Let's put it that way. And so I think like now I get, pretty regularly, I'll get firms that are saying, hey, we're looking at acquiring, can we bounce some ideas off of you? And so we've been able to share some of this learning with others. And, I don't know if I would be shocked if there's any acquisitions that are like really like they're just home run grand slams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because usually somebody selling externally, they have something that is causing them from being able to transition it internal, right? And so there's usually, and or the owner is very involved in the business. They're very, I don't know, they're not as easy to replace as many buyers think, and so you end up having a little bit of that along the way.
Right.
And then clients, frankly, clients don't like being sold, right? They don't like there's just an inherent like, wait a second here, why wasn't I valuable enough to keep? It's like, well, they sold the whole firm.
Mm-hmm.
So you're stuck with us. You're stuck with a new CPA, whether you like it or not. I think we're pretty good at this. So why don't you give us a chance? That it kind of comes into the, at the end of the day, that sometimes is the conversation we have to have.
So how did you mitigate that when that happened? What did you do with these clients?
I mean, it comes down to communication, right? You have to be able to give them some sense of, hey, I'm in a good spot. There's a quality firm here. We've got enough people. I'm not just a random, number to them. And then I think, having a good system in place, that really helps a lot. Having something where they can see that, we know what we're doing. And hey, by the way, here's a nice roadmap for you on how you're going to work with us. We spent a lot of time developing, process and systems that, make sure that each client, when they come in, have a fairly consistent experience. And so when you get these new clients as part of an acquisition, a lot of times they're used to doing something a certain way, right? And a lot of firms experience this. We've been virtually paperless the whole time. We acquire these couple practices. We have all these boxes all over the place, and we just frankly didn't have room. So back to my daughter scanning all, summer and winter and spring, we get all this stuff paperlessly. Well, now these clients from some of these other firms come in, they're used to just dropping off not a box, but, like a, big binder of stuff, and thinking we're going to meander through it, and being able to train them, talk to them on best practices, and make them feel like, hey, this is actually a better way to do it than you're used to. That's helped them a lot. I think just constant communication with anything in a transition helps.
When you were, so you had some clients that you gained organically, and then you were purchasing these firms. So you don't necessarily know what you're getting when you're purchasing the firms.
Right.
So how did you, like, at what point, when did you think about like who that ideal client is? How did you figure out what they are? And what's your current strategy for attracting more of those ideal clients?
I think, if you follow most business books, right, there's some mention of ideal client early on, right? I mean, that to me, and frankly, when I see this a lot, like people will post in Twitter about how much they're working, they're overworked, whatever. And I'm like, if you focus on good pricing and ideal clients, the overworking thing kind of solves itself for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So we early on, I knew this, but I was in strategic coach 2016 or 17, 18, 19, all the way up until COVID. And that is one of the first things they talk about, is defining who you are as a firm, who you want to work with, who you feel the most energized about.
Yeah.
And so we went back early on and said, okay, who are our top 20% of our clients? Those are our A clients. Those are the people we want to replicate more and more of. And I'm a big believer in really bucketing your clients in these 5 buckets of, A, B, C, D, and then, not F necessarily. So you'd say E, right? E, those are the clients that frankly you kind of hold on to, and you really should, if you just have no emotion in any part of it, you should just let them go every year. Like that should be just a constant growth. Or you maybe not let them go, but how can you convert them up to a B and C level from E, right? Mm-hmm. And for a lot of firms, these are the, under $1,000 for us. That'd be like an under $1,000 tax return. that's a client we wouldn't take on if they called today. We may keep some of them because maybe they're just really easy to work with. And frankly, if they're in that bucket and they work with us, it doesn't mean we don't value them. They just may not be the right fit for a firm that wants to do full planning. We get in, no harm, no foul. They just, if somebody needs a basic tax return, we're not necessarily the best fit. I'll diverge for just 1 second. We have actually solved for that a little bit. We added a contractor this year who's a CPA. And so he works with all of those tax only clients now. And we've considered growing that as well, because frankly, a lot of firms are offloading those clients. And so I think there is a solution there. I just haven't gotten that far yet.
Yeah.
But I think that's really important early on, is to make sure, hey, who are these top 20% we really like? Every time we see their name or they call, there's an energy. You answer the call, you're excited to talk to them. Let's go find more of those. And then trying to work with the team too. Like, why do you like working with them? Typically, they're just friendly people, right?
Right.
Just, it goes back to, you hear this all the time of companies that say, yeah, we've got a no jerk rule, right? You don't want no jerks in the building.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, because I think CPAs by and large, will let, it's anything for a buck, right? Let's get in all the revenue and grow. And they get obsessed with growth numbers on the revenue side and don't realize that really the key is happy team and happy clients.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we certainly have that. And I mean, if you got all of our clients together in a room, everyone's going to get along quite nicely. It's important.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
to say no.
Yeah. I think it's
Because
really
what's funny is some of our clients now, who may be in that lower 50%, were our A clients when we started. Like our first year, we sent out a bottle of wine to all of our clients who were more than $2,500 in fees. And there was about 50 of them. And now we don't even take on a client who's not going to be at least $2,500 in fees.
So that's really interesting. Okay, so then as the owners of the firm, for you and Michelle, as you've evolved like that, you know how it is when your business is starting and you're super, super hands-on and you're in the weeds and you just have this emotional connection to every client. As you grew, like, what were some of the first things that you guys realized you're going to have to let go of? And what were the things that were harder to let go of than others?
Yeah. I'll say pretty lucky, right? I'm blessed that early on I had somebody show me this method of looking at your tasks and categorizing them into green, yellow, and red light activities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm one of those. I'm a huge, if I don't like doing this, I'm going to delegate it to somebody. You either have to insource it or outsource it, delegate it somehow, or just delete it completely. I shouldn't do this at all. And so I had that early on. And so we really that was kind of a key point, is what are the things we don't like doing? Well, I knew I didn't like doing administrative tasks. So our first hire was an administrative professional, somebody that could come in, could handle all the paperwork, the scanning. And no, it was not our kids. It was actually somebody. And then from there, it was, if we're going to grow, we're going to have to get another person to do some of the work, because otherwise it's just us doing the work. And so then our second hire was another CPA who could come in really as a tax manager and take on clients and handle it and get tax returns done from A to Z. Mm-hmm. And so those were our two first hires. And then our third hire was a staff person. It happened to be a young guy who was just out of college. He was going to go to law school, but he, knew he wanted to go work for a couple of years before going to law school. And, was just about to get married. He was in the smitten age of, young love. And, so he came and worked with us. And this is, somebody who, just graduated from college. So was new, but was very hungry and humble, and knew what he knew and knew what he didn't know, and would just help get everything done he possibly could. And it was a really good transition for us. And then over the years, we just kind of started adding, I think our next thing was we acquired another small practice. And with that, we got another tax preparer, an EA, and she's been with us since then. And so we've had, a pretty good run, I think, from retaining employees to be able to have some of these longer term employees who've been with us. One of them is over 10 years already.
That's huge too. Like, a talent, obviously, I mean, there's always the elephant in the room when it comes to CPA firms, right? Because
Yeah.
what, like 300,000 CPAs have left the profession or retired since 2019, something like that. So keeping a team is huge.
Yeah.
What is it? What's your secret sauce there?
I think it is having a group of clients that are good to work with. You know, if we have a client that's rude or inconsiderate or just not easy to work with, like they just never respond to things until it's the last second, we've offloaded them. You know, we haven't retained clients that are bad fits. We have the no jerk rule, right? Where, I mean, if somebody calls up and swears at my team, they're pretty much getting terminated quickly.
I love that.
Yeah, we don't put up with that really at all. You know, they may last a day or two, but no, there's a lot of times where within the hour they're getting an email saying, "Hey, listen, heard you had a tough conversation. I get you can be frustrated, but there's just no reason for that. And, you know, unfortunately, we're going to have to, you know, terminate this relationship." I think having their back.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't like working weekends and overtime and all this stuff. So I don't really want to force my team into that.
Right.
And so I think trying to figure out how can we do this without forcing them into this just overly, you know, burdensome schedule of hours and
right.
just work that they don't like.
Right.
And, you know, we joined PASBA, Professional Association of Small Business Accountants. I happen to be on the board right now. So, well, whatever, plug for PASBA. But, you know, we joined PASBA back in 2019. And somebody on, I think one of the Facebook accounting groups said, "Oh man, if you really wanted to have the right firm, you should join PASBA." Well, for me, who chases shiny objects, that was all I needed to know. And I quickly went on and looked at it. And I'm like, oh, they work with accounting firms and they want work-life balance. This is great. I signed up Michelle. Like, "Hey, Michelle, I signed you up for this new accounting group. These people will tell you how to do everything great," right? Like, and
I bet
about
she was
6 months into it, I'm the one participating.
Yeah.
And that really was, you have consistent monthly clients. You have people, you know, clients that you're working with throughout the year. You get rid of a lot of the seasonality. Payroll is a big one. A lot of PASBA firms have payroll in-house. So we have a payroll practice as well that works under the CPA firm and files payroll for, I don't know, almost 75, 80 clients at this point. And then the wealth management piece, right? Coming from a wealth management firm, that was another thing that is very kind of a 360 view, right? We help them grow, we help them maintain, and then when they go to sell, we can help them preserve what they have forever, right? Until, you know, based on their goals. And I think that helps a lot. That helps the clients, you know, with client retention. And at the same time, I think it helps with staff retention too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that 360-degree view is really important because you're looking at everything from their business balance sheet to their personal balance sheet, right? And helping them maximize that wealth accumulation, minimize tax liability. Sometimes the two don't always coexist, but yeah, that's awesome. So what about, as you guys have grown, what are some of like the systems or tools that were the biggest game changers for you to help scale, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, I think having the right practice management system, we use Count now. We've used them for 5 years.
Yeah.
We were one of the early adopters. It was a web-based platform. That has helped a lot. I mean, one of the huge things though is still people, right? Because there's tons of, I mean, you go Carbon Canopy, you know, you could name a bunch of them, right? And there's even ones that are non-accounting based that are really good to use, like Monday and some of them.
Yeah.
But having the right people. So I'll say we got lucky again, right? We tend to get lucky a lot more than we care to admit, but
it's not a bad thing.
My chiropractor's wife, it was the middle of COVID and her company literally was just tanking. And he was talking about, he's like, "Oh, Brittany needs to find a job." Right. And it was kind of a funny, like, no. And all of a sudden I'm like, "Wait, what'd she do?" And he's like, "Well, she does marketing." And, you know, I was like, "But she's pretty cool. He really likes her." I'm like, "We should talk to her." And she's been working with us for 5 years now. She literally has a game changer for us because she brought in, too many firms get stuck having the practitioners do marketing, sales, client admin, all this stuff, right? And it was literally like all back to the red light activities. All of these activities, she can just get them done. And it is amazing at how allowing her to just really run the firm
Mm-hmm.
as like a COO role has been a huge, I mean, that helped us scale more than anything,
Mm-hmm.
because then it's not me trying to figure out how I'm going to do all this. It's we have people, and then she's now hired a couple people on her team that are just strictly admin related that just make sure the office and everything runs smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having a really good practice management system has helped. One thing, and this is what we're working on now, right, is to now take this from, we've got a practice management system, but we don't have a CRM.
Right.
And being able to have an actual CRM that we can actually track leads that come in,
Mm-hmm.
we can message better to them. That's really now our next
Yeah.
foray. And I think that's what's going to take us from that $4 to $10 million range. Will being able to actively go out and actually go find clients instead of just, I mean, we've been really good at getting referrals. Like our clients refer us a lot of business that's helped us grow, but actually going out there and actively producing something will be the next step.
And you hit on something really important. That is what a lot of firms miss, is everyone has the practice management system in place. So they think that's their CRM. But what it doesn't do is, and everyone's very good at referrals. If you're an accountant, you're awesome at referrals, but that's not predictive, right? Like you're predictable. You can't predict growth based on referrals. And so having like something to capture leads and then nurture them all the way through to the close process is huge. And so, and I think that's really cool that you brought Brittany in from out of industry, right? So then she's got unique, different perspectives of how to do things, which is great because you want those fresh eyes looking at your business saying, well, this is what you should be doing. And I think you're right. That is a game changer when it comes to scaling, is being willing to bring other people in to take over those red light tasks that you don't necessarily like, administrative, marketing, things like that really will scale the firm.
Yeah. I like doing sales, right? I like talking to prospective clients.
Yeah.
Especially just because you've got to look at it as like, they've got some problems they want to solve. And on the basic of basic levels, one of their problems is the IRS requires an annual tax filing. So somebody's going to have to do this.
Yep.
They either don't know what they're doing, they don't want to use TurboTax, whatever. Like that is the pure, like the basic, right? But a lot of them, they have other things. I don't know what my numbers tell me. I don't know if I'm doing well or not. I hear all my friends, write off everything and make all this money and they go on all these vacations and I'm working so hard. Why do I have to work harder? To make less money. And so sometimes being able to understand that and then work on finding a solution for them. And then clearly, if we're the right solution, it's even better, right? If for us, it's like, we can actually help this person. We can actually do something that will be a benefit to them, not just an annual check the box tax filing.
That's huge. That's absolutely huge, because I think most small business owners today, they understand that a tax return is just one of those necessary evils, right? It's a piece of history. What's more important is, how do I understand my numbers? Why are they important to me? Which ones are important to me? How do I forecast? How do I budget? How do I achieve this goal I want to achieve? And if accountants speak that language of business, and most entrepreneurs didn't go into business to do that. They went into business to do something they're really good at. So I always tell other business owners, like, the number one first thing you need to outsource is all of your financial stuff. Outsource it, find somebody who can do all of it under one roof, if possible. And then, or that someone that has a really good relationship with, maybe you've got a bookkeeper and a CPA, or maybe you've got a wealth manager and a CPA, but at least that they are willing to communicate. But I think that's a really key piece of any business owner's success, for sure.
Right. Yeah, because it's funny, right? This is called The Numbers Don't Lie. And you're right, the numbers don't lie. And sometimes, though, if you're looking at the wrong numbers, they may be telling you the truth, but it just may not be the truth you need, right? And so you not only have to go, wait, I know everything is the truth, but at the same time, like, what is the relevant truth? Versus, and I think the biggest problem that small businesses, especially, they get too focused on the revenue number and miss out on the cash flow number, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, man, my business has doubled, but my cash flow is still the same. Why is that? Why is that happening? And a lot of times you can see inefficiencies. The right accounting advisor will be able to see where the inefficiencies are and then have that conversation and then help them develop a plan on how to eliminate some of the things that are holding them back, or get them so they can focus on the things that really are the key.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm on a couple boards, and it's amazing how many times, of course, because I'm an accountant, I end up being the treasurer somehow. And coming in, if there was a non-accountant treasurer before, so many things they were focusing on the wrong things. They're like, oh, we got all these grants, and look at how many donations we have, and it's like, why are we doing more? Why don't we have a bigger impact? Well, how much are you spending on some of these things? Like, oh wow, like we're our administrative burden is way too high compared to others, or with the country club board, right? Oh, we're spending too much on food and beverage, something like that. Like,
Right.
there's things to the numbers, and they need to know which ones are the relevant.
Right. And helping people understand the story behind the numbers, I think is an art.
Yeah.
It really is.
Can I ask you a question? Craig, I asked you this before in other conversations that we had. My question is, how come now? Like, why are you looking at marketing and working with us? What changed your firm? I mean, you kind of touched on it. You want to go from 4 million to 10 million. You think that this is the way. But how come? I mean, you've had Brittany with you for 5 years. I mean, what's going on? Is it stuff going on in the world, AI, all that kind of stuff? Like, what is it?
I think part of it is this has been on my hit list for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm one of those. So as a business owner, I'm one of those that has an idea, but I need to let it simmer for a while until the easiest, fastest way to achieve the goal becomes clear. And so we've been talking about this forever. And frankly, HubSpot was too expensive, right? And so otherwise we could have jumped into HubSpot and spent $30,000, $40,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
But it never seemed like there was going to be something that really drove actual results from just getting this, right? So it's one of those where it wasn't broken, but it wasn't really working either.
Right.
And so I think it's just we've gotten to that point now where we've cleaned up some of the underlying, it wasn't really a mess, but some of the underlying things that we needed to get more systems in place, get some of the right people in the right seats, some of those things, to where now she can be freed up to spend more time on it. Because she's been spending the last 5 years. I mean, she's really been spending so much time, she came in right when we just acquired another practice. And this was the one that we always talk about as the Tasmanian devil that we somehow let in the office, right? You had mentioned this you had mentioned this earlier, which was, you don't know what you're going to get until you get it. Well, we opened the door after the day of the acquisition and realized their client list, like all the details they had, was a complete mess. Stuff that you wouldn't be able to find out until you get further along. They were doing a ton of free tax returns. Some of them they were doing for family, and it'd be like, oh, it's a family. The total fees are $8,000. Well, they had 7 trusts and 3 businesses, and it's, when all of a sudden you peel it all back, it's, a headache of work. So she spent a lot of time those first year or two just getting things organized and cleaned up. And so I think we've now gotten to that point where we've been able to build a system that is easier to manage the referrals. So we have more time now to go actually actively seek new clients.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's great. That
Cool.
makes sense.
Well, we're a little over 30 minutes, but I do have a couple of fun questions for you. But before we do those two, what would you say? We talk to a lot of firm owners who are stuck, right? They're stuck at 500,000, they're stuck at 750, they're stuck at $1 million. And, there's all sorts of strategies that we can advise. But as someone who has been successful with growth, what would be like your very best piece of advice for someone who's stuck and really wanting to kind of break through and grow?
Twofold. They got to figure out the role on the team that will allow them to be unstuck. They take it from a Dan Sullivan book, who, not how, right? I think too many people get stuck trying to figure out how they're going to get everything done or how they're going to take it to the next level. And what they need is a who that will help them take it to the next level. And that's where I'm saying either you have, you outsource it, right? Or you are internally able to add a piece to your team, whether it's administrative, professionally, sales and marketing, whatever role that is. There's one role that would allow you to go to that next level at multiple different stages, right? I think business owners are constantly stuck in this feeling of they're the awkward teenager phase. There's always like, I know if I just was an adult, and it's like, okay, so I know if I grew from 5 to 10 people, then I could hire marketing and sales and another admin, right? And then at 10, you're like, oh man, if we could just get to 20, then we can have a couple of admins. We probably could have a marketing and a salesperson. We can hire another tax manager and maybe 2 staff, right? There's people you can add, and then you can, build up more growth. And I think trying to figure out that piece of it, of who are the who's, that are going to allow you to get unstuck. That's a big chunk of it. But frankly, they've got to get out of the mentality of that they need to be the ones doing it.
Yeah.
Got to get away from the how are they going to get it done and figure out who's going to help them do it.
Yeah. And another book along those lines is Dan Martell's book. What's the name of it?
Buy Back Your Time.
Buy Back Your Time. Yep. That's another. Yeah. Got it right.
Well, here somewhere.
It's
actually, I'm packing our office. We're actually moving this Saturday to a new office down the street. And it's in one of my boxes that is.
Oh.
I literally had it up. I mean, my admin and I went through that. Just all the different chapters. And we're like, okay, hey, wait. I got to stop looking at my emails. Right?
Yeah.
And so I delegate. It was one of his biggest things is do not look at your emails. Delegate that to somebody.
Yeah.
Who can do it and who's actually pretty good at it. And so Caitlin now, it's amazing how many times I'm like, oh, I didn't even know they sent me an email. She goes, oh, it didn't matter. Somebody else already responded to it. I moved those already into the client folder. I'm like,
oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
So nice. Yeah. Well, good advice. All right. Let me ask you 2 fun questions. So, all right. I love to ask this to accountants. So be honest. What's the weirdest or funniest thing that a client has ever asked you to write off for their tax return?
Oh, well, one that we joked about for a while, we had one that was writing off purses.
How do you do that? Fill me in, please.
And they were, you technically just put it on your income statement and you write it off somehow. They came over and were like, hey, what's in this category? And it was all this like Louis Vuitton and stuff. And they were literally buying purses as gifts for their team members.
Oh my!
Like, come out, you can't do that. And they were like, well, the prior CPA said we could do that. That one was pretty much because we're like, and they literally, the other CPA, we responded, go, how did you justify writing that off? And they said, oh, well, you have purses and stuff, small things like that. We're like, these are $1,000 purses. Like no, like that's not a gift.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
That was funny. One funny story of, thinking through, we early on had a client, his wife, had a document and she took a picture of it and just wasn't paying attention to the fact that she had a mini skirt on and she put it on her lap and took a picture.
Oh.
It basically sent us a picture that we quickly had to delete because it was not appropriate. And, we're like, hey, so we deleted that photo. You may want to look at it on your phone, but could you send us this? Just put it on the table next time.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I'm like, did you not think of what was on the other side of that picture?
See that when you sent it? Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
That was
wow, that's crazy. I heard something not too long ago about somebody trying to write off Botox and filler because it had something.
Wait, you can't do that?
Yeah. Well, hey, I'd love to know.
Right?
Yeah.
You can if you own a med spa.
Okay. All right.
Those are supplies, right? That, you just don't, you just have to, you're paying for the supplies. We have a couple med spas.
Yeah.
And I say this, right? Don't take this as tax advice, but, if you buy the actual materials, it's part of your inventory. And so.
Sure. Right. Yeah. No, this was something more in the context that they had to look good on camera. It was like a real estate agent or something. And I'm like,
I think I need this. Yeah.
I want that strategy. Right.
This may be my new strategy under section 168.526.
Exactly. So, okay. If you were not running a CPA firm with your wife, what would you be doing instead?
Traveling the world and playing golf with my family.
Oh boy, you and Brad. Oh my gosh.
Not even a hesitation. Michelle and I that's one of the big things. We've taken our family now, the 2 girls, we've gone to Italy for 3.5 weeks. We did Germany and Austria for 2.5 weeks last year. We've done, France and Amsterdam. Michelle just went to Finland and, and Amsterdam and Paris with my daughter. Travel is a huge thing. I love exploring. I love just getting in a city like Florence and just walking around and just observing and exploring. And then if I can mix in a round of golf at world top 100 golf courses along the way, that's win-win.
Have you done a Scotland trip or an Ireland trip yet?
I've done Ireland for 10 days. I've done Scotland twice. We have spent 5 weeks in Scotland in the last 15 years. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's-
our 21-year-old, when she was one, we went to Scotland for 3 weeks, and we've got pictures of her falling asleep on the London Bridge
Oh,
and at St. Andrews, and we've got her on the Swilcan Bridge at St. Andrews. So yeah,
oh.
traveling is a huge piece of our family, and I think once they're out of the off the nest in a year or so, we're gonna have to we'll be doing a little bit more traveling.
That's so exciting. Oh man, you're speaking Brad's love language there.
Which part of it, travel or golf?
Both.
Both. Okay, there you go.
I tend not to play as much golf on travel. I really like I play golf all the time, but definitely want to incorporate that as well. But I love Italy, Florence, and all of Italy. Amsterdam was great.
Yeah, my daughter studied in Paris this last semester. She visited 18 countries in Europe in the 4.5 months.
Wow, good for her.
Every weekend they would do a train or somewhere. She did Iceland, Finland, Sweden.
That's awesome.
That's not all right.
Yeah.
Iceland. Did she love it there?
Oh yeah. It was cold, but
Yeah.
I mean the pictures are just it's so beautiful.
I've heard the volcanoes and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for joining us and giving us all of your insights and knowledge. We really appreciate it. We're excited to work with you, and we're so excited that you could be a guest on the podcast.
Yes.
And so
thank you.
to all of our listeners, thank you so much. And until next time, we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.